Hey guys, Lawrence here from Unicorn Bikes with part 2 of our GT Power Series 1.0 Revival build. The frame's back, the parts are back, now we just gotta put everything back together. Now the frame was in pretty rough shape as well, so I'm gonna show you what I did to fix it. I'm also gonna show you around the parts and what those needed in order to actually make them usable again. Alright, so first up, the frame itself. I couldn't get the UFO and the TLD sticker off without taking everything else off, so that's staying sadly. Now the bottom bracket, that was the main problem. I had no idea how this works. Apparently it is super simple. So on the drive side there is a lock ring sort of thing, but that was missing on the non-drive side, and obviously I have no experience with these. Turns out you can just adjust these with your fingers. That's basically it, or some tools, but you don't actually need it because once you put it too tight it won't spin properly anymore. Right now it's still not spinning perfectly because it's the old bearings, because good luck finding a replacement. That's it for the bottom bracket, so that's now refurbished, let's put it that way. Also got a new headset, but using the old upper and lower cup, so it will look stock but it's actually new bearings. The big problem were the dropouts. So my horizontal dropouts turned into diagonal dropouts because this part was completely bent. Now that is of course a bit of a problem, not just from a frame straightness perspective because the frame is not perfectly straight anymore, but also just from a safety standpoint because you don't want this to break off. And to make matters a little bit worse, as you can maybe see, there's pretty big gouging on the metal here. This is also still bent open a little bit because I didn't feel comfortable pressing it closed all the way to make these perfectly parallel. The next thing, of course, with all that metal getting scraped off, there was a little problem with a lot of burrs. And because there were so many burrs here, I couldn't actually slide the wheel in properly anymore. So I took a file, just a flat, thin file, and I just filed it down, so this is now perfectly parallel, so that at least if the wheel goes in, it will slide in smoothly, so I can adjust it properly, straighten it properly, but also this height and this height should be the same. Now I didn't film any of that because it was super boring. The sad thing, first of all, the saddle, I couldn't get it properly clean. It's still dirty looking, discolored looking. It looks, if I look at the bottom, it looks like there is a leather layer with a plastic over top, but I don't think I can actually take the plastic off and replace it. So we're riding a discolored saddle. The bolts and stuff, that was actually more of a success story. So I got most of the rust off, if not all the rust. Pretty simple, I actually just used some vinegar. So like just vinegar, just soaked all of these for 2 days and a sponge and just scrub away until the rust goes away. It's pretty simple. But that actually took me hours to get all the rust off. And then because I lost one of the lock rings for the bottom bracket, I also have some different sized washers to make sure that the bottom bracket doesn't come loose while actually riding it. All the main stuff stays the same. I got a new chain, which I actually forgot to buy. I cut down the seat post, cut some new grooves in so that it still works and I still have the original seat post. I have some ODI grips because these were dirt cheap and they're push-on grips. Hopefully they're going to work. The handlebars are a little bit worse for wear, so hopefully the grips will still slide on. The fork is doing pretty well. So the dropouts here are still straight and not too badly damaged. The chainring, as I said, was still flat. And then I'm going to try a Shimano V-brake. And I have no idea whether or not this will actually fit the frame. If not, we're going brakeless. And also a Shimano Deore mechanical brake lever. Actually says this is for disc brakes, and this is obviously not a disc brake, but I mean, it's a lever, it pulls a cable. It doesn't really matter. Then I have tire-wise some Maxxis Holy Rollers. They're not exactly a race BMX tire, but it should be a good mix for anything from race to park to dirt jumps. So that's why I went with these, and some generic Continental tubes in there. The wheels are a different story, so I can reuse the front wheel, but the axle is actually bent a little bit, but it's not too bad. It still rotates, so whatever. I'm not trying to spend heaps of money on this one. But the rear wheel was cracked and the hubs were gone, and basically it wasn't really repairable for a decent budget, so I just got a new rear wheel. I can still reuse the original free hub, so that's good. But this is a 48 spoke wheel, I think. It just has more spokes than the other one. And yeah, it's slightly narrower than the original wheel, but it should still be pretty good. At least, I mean, the tire will be a little bit more rounded, but whatever. I don't really care. This is a 30 euro, I think, wheel. It's not super heavy. It's probably quite strong, so we'll go with this. It's not like I'm actually trying to win anything in Race BMX on this one. First things first, grease everything up, put the headset in, put the fork in. Shouldn't take too long, and hopefully not get myself completely covered in grease, because that's of course always the least fun bit of bike assembly. Now you can never really use too much grease, but you also don't want to completely cover yourself in it, do you? Alright guys, so I just spent a little bit of time confusing myself. Please let me know if it is normal for there to be this wide a gap between the chainring and the little lock nut. At least the crank spin. That's nice, you don't get that on every bike these days. And the chainring doesn't wobble. So that's very nice. I haven't, tightened all these things up, so let's do that right now. After a really long time of messing around with these grips and trying to push them on, they are finally on, and it took so long the camera died. So I've gone ahead and already installed the rear wheel somewhat. So it's not spaced properly yet, it's not tightened yet. Just gotta say, that looks so good and it matches perfectly. So really happy with the tire choice and just having an orange yellow logo on there. The thing is, this is a Race BMX. This is a 2.2, I think, wide tire, and BMX bikes really aren't made for that. So if we have a little tiny look at the spacing, I don't really have a lot of room in there. So I'll have to really use these chain tensioners to make sure the wheel is perfectly straight and as close to the front as I possibly can. All right, 15 minutes later and the rear wheel is in. It's rubbing a little bit, but as you can maybe see, we're really far near the end of our chainstay or our dropout. So maybe we should have gone with a slightly lower profile tire, or a narrower tire or a wider rim to lower the height of the tire a little bit. All right, so we made a little bit of progress. Brake is on and nice and tight. Cranks are on tight, wheels are on, saddle's on. The cockpit is still loose, I have to adjust that. But now it's time for the chain, and once I have the chain in, I hope I have enough room on the chain tensioner to actually tension the chain. And once the chain is tensioned, I'll also get rid of this little bit of rub. So let's get the chain on. Small setback because of, I don't know why, but basically this is as short as I can get the chain. There's quite a bit of slack on there, as you can see. So I don't know if I can still use these or if I'm just gonna have to put the rear wheel even further backwards, but just do it by eye really, and just hope for the best and hope it doesn't move when I land somewhat sideways. So it's a new day, new SD card, new battery, because yesterday I went into the very late hours finishing the bike. I mostly struggled with the rear brake, so I'm going to bring you in and talk about the rear brake for a second. So this was my nemesis yesterday, and still today it is. I'm not happy with the brake feel. I don't know, actually I do know why it's not being ideal, but basically I can't get it set up the way I want to set it up. The brake works, but as you can see, if I squeeze the brakes as hard as I can, first of all, the lever goes all the way to the bars. I hate that. But also the arm actually touches the tire, but only on the right side. On the left there's, well, actually it's also touching on the left. That wasn't the case yesterday. So I'm not a big fan of mechanical brakes. I expressed that with quite a few swear words yesterday. I won't be including that because I wasn't happy with what I was saying and what I was showing. Well, I cannot get this brake set up properly. So I'm actually going to show you why I think I can't get this brake set up properly. So I think this is the ideal angle to explain the problems I had. As I said, in order to get chain tension, I had to run the axle all the way back. So this is now giving me a 450-ish mil chainstay length, which is quite massive for a tiny little bike like this. But because the wheel moves back all the way, the rim also moves back. And as you can see here, I actually ran out of room on the slider that the brake pad slot into. So what happens is, as I press the brake, the amount of rotation the pad does compared to how far it actually moves gets a lot less because the radius is lower. So ideally, I'd be able to move my brake mounts together with my axle, but obviously the brake mounts are welded here and they're not going anywhere. So I don't really know how to fix this. I have no idea if there are different sort of brake arms, if I can put extra spacers in here to open up the arms as well. I don't know, it's something I'm going to look into, but this is where I will be ending part 2 of this video. Overall, I am incredibly happy with the bike. I'll just take you off the tripod and try not to shake too much. But I think, first of all, the bike looks brilliant. I really like the contrast of the black and the red and the yellow, and having new tires. Oh, they're nice, but they're also way too big. So as you can see, the clearance is pretty tight, so I hope this wheel isn't going to get bent too badly. On the front, again, minimal clearance, awesome for foot jams, but again, if I screw up the wheel too much, it's probably going to be bad. Other than that, the brake lever kind of feels like this. So at here it bites, so it already starts biting here, but then if you actually want some brake force, it goes up to here, and if you really squeeze it, it goes all the way to the bar. And that is again because the radius from brake pad to pivot point is so tiny that you lose a lot of leverage here, or actually you gain a lot of leverage, but you lose actuation distance, which is why I hate V-brakes or rim brakes in general. Anyway, I was not able to get the saddle perfectly white again. It's just the plastic overlay is discolored. That sucks, and I can't find another one secondhand. But other than that, I was able to use or reuse pretty much all the original parts on this bike, and I'm extremely happy with how it turned out. Another small thing that may be a problem, but I can't really show it, is I've got a sneaking suspicion that the handlebars aren't perfectly straight anymore. I kind of feel like the left grip is kind of rotated backwards ever so slightly, but I mean, it's not problematic, it's just something I noticed. But that is basically it for part 2 of this video. I tried riding it because we've got sunshine outside, but the thing is, I'm used to riding really big, long downhill bikes, super squishy big things, an extra long enduro bike. So hopping on this didn't go very well. Honestly, I can't even bunny hop this thing at the moment, or at least not very high. So I'm gonna ride this bike as much as I can, get used to the bike as much as I can. Then I'll take it to a BMX racetrack or a pump track, whatever I can find here in this area that I live in, and I'll shoot the third part of this video. For now though, if you like this bike as much as I do, thumbs up and hit the subscribe and do all those things YouTubers tell you to do. But for now, a massive thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.